Okay, so for those of you here, this is weird. We haven't been meeting in a long time, and so this is a good thing. I hope you guys will interact a little bit if you can. But this is really just an informational meeting about task force, and then we hope to have a more official meeting, hopefully within a week, if not 2 weeks at the latest, because we have some things that we need to work out, and just really need some task force input with regard to those things. I also just want to get our task force built back together, so that's why I wanted to have this informational meeting, was to try to let people know what we do and what the expectations are. So since some of you are already on the task force, you've been a part, then it may not be as big a deal. So I'm just going to rush through the objectives here a little more specifically to clarify the structure and expectations, which, as I mentioned, some of you, if not all of you, already kind of understand how we work. I'm also going to outline just some tentative tasks that are coming up. And we'll talk a little bit about the selection process and signing up teachers if we need to. I don't know if we'll need to get too much into that. All right, so task force structure, 3 teacher members per course is kind of what we've had. There's really nothing that's set in stone. We have kind of tried to get 4 Algebra 1 members just to make sure we included at least 1 middle school Algebra 1 teacher. We are hoping to add financial math and Algebra 3 to the group. That would be just more high school related, but just FYI. So I know sometimes we have people go from middle school to high school. We are still in the process of developing a procedure for choosing members. We haven't really pushed the issue because we haven't needed. We've only had just enough volunteers to fill the spots. But as we move forward, I hope that more people will be interested in being a part of the task force, and that'll necessitate us developing those procedures. We ask our members to serve a year, and typically we get it started in late December, right before the Christmas break, so that we can be ready to roll in January. But I was told this year to leave you guys alone because of all the overwhelming pulls on your time at school. And so I've tried to be respectful of that and stay out of y'all's way as much as possible, while still trying to be available if you need me for something. So hopefully that's going to change as COVID seems to be waning. We hope that it continues to wane and there are no other waves, but just have to kind of take that as we go. But that's typically what we'll do. Since we didn't do that in December, we are just kind of getting it started now. And there's not any major crises going on with middle school. We're still just trying to work the accelerate process and teach our kids from where they are as best we can. And we'll probably be doing that for another year or 2. I'm told that the extended time schedule that you guys received this year and the stipend, I'm told that that's supposed to last another 2 years. So hopefully that'll be the case. And by that time, we should have all of our kids where they need to be. I've heard from some teachers who have said they wish we could just keep this indefinitely, and I haven't really heard anybody oppose that, but I'm hearing that for the next 2 years, this is where we'll be. So the 23-24 school year and the 24-25 school year, we expect to have the same scheduling and stipends in place for middle school math teachers. If I hear anything different on that, I would let you know immediately. Again, that's not 100% guarantee. That's just what I've been told. You know, we don't really have any limitation, like term limits on task force members. A couple members have been with us since we started a few years ago, and others have kind of come and gone. Again, those are procedures that we can work on and solidify a little bit more as needed. But basically just asking you to serve, and that's if you're willing and interested in serving, we want to make that possible for you. And then we always pay stipends for meetings, not for this meeting, since it's an informational meeting, but any official task force meetings, which would be the next thing coming up. We're able to pay $25 an hour for meetings, and we're able to pay $40 per hour when you're conducting professional development. All right, the expectations, we have some meeting norms that we tend to abide by, and those are pretty standard, I think. And then I've mentioned about the 1 year of service already. So typically I ask you to commit for 1 year, which for now would just be from now until December. So it'd be an abbreviated year for task force. And then, you know, basically you're supposed to work with myself, any other district people who are involved in math decisions to determine what our needs are, and then, you know, also providing training and support around those needs. We also work to deliver that training and provide support throughout the year. So not just during the summer when we tend to do a lot of professional development, but throughout the school year. Mainly it includes the summer training sessions. Now I will tell you that summer training for middle school, the primary summer training has been defined for us, and it's coming from a company called Zern, which actually uses illustrative mathematics. That's what they are, a distributor of illustrative mathematics. So you'll be getting some information on that. I think it's mostly geared toward teachers teaching in our summer programs though, so I'm not exactly sure all that's going on with that. As I get more information, I'll get that. Should be coming out within the next week or two, all the details there. That said, we are revising some of the training that we already have in place. I'll talk about that in just a second. The other expectations, we want to positively, enthusiastically support all district-wide math initiatives. That gets a little confusing sometimes because you guys know in Caddo, we don't mandate a ton from the district level, which is gets a little confusing sometimes because sometimes information will go out from my office or from someone else here at central office, and then your administrators may tell you something different. And I've always tried to make it clear that your administrators are your final authority on everything. So if you hear something from us that differs from something that your administrators are telling you, obviously we want to talk through that as needed, but your response to that is to always go with your school administrators, your principal and assistant principal, even if it differs from what I'm telling you. And I do my best to be aware of when administrators are sending a different message and support that. Obviously, I would love it if we were all exactly on the same page, but that's just not the way we roll. And part of it's due to the makeup of our district, that we are very diverse and we have diverse needs. Even within the same campuses, sometimes the needs are quite diverse. So those require custom solutions. And so even though we may put out some general guidance from central office, the final decision comes from your administrators. So we just try to support that. As a task force member, I guess what I'm saying there is that can be a little confusing because you're trying to support that message at your school that I've put out or someone else has put out here. But if it gets filtered a different way through your administration, then obviously we have to support it in that way. And then, at our meetings, we try to be mindful of and intentional about confidentiality. Not that we ever are hiding anything, but there's sometimes where we have a message that we need the task force to work on, and it's just not the right time to communicate it district-wide yet. So it doesn't happen really a lot, but we just want to, if you come on the task force, you have to kind of understand and try to clarify. I mean, I have to do this in my position too. There are sometimes I've been given information and I have to clarify, wait, is this something that can go out or not? And if not, when? So, and part of that is just trying to avoid confusion. So that's just one little thing of being a part of the task force. All right, so specific middle school tasks. Obviously, every year we do some scope and sequence updates. We got to do a few more this year, so that's where I'm really going to need some help from task force members. I don't know if I think our website, caddomath.org, may still be active, but we actually have already officially ended our agreement with the company that provided that site. We put our information, our Caddo Math website, on the school board website, the caddoschools.org website. So I've made a little bit of that transition. It's not as nice as I would like it to be. In fact, after we did it initially, now the school board has changed providers, I think, for that website. I think it's somebody else now that operates the Caddo Schools website. So it looks different from even when we started it. So anyway, I've got to put some time into that. I would love some task force help on the website, but it also means, as far as the scope and sequence documents, we had a lot of our links in our scope and sequence documents that were referenced and stored in our caddomath.org website. So now that website's going away, we have to revise those links. And I've started some of that work, but it is a huge undertaking because you know how many links are in the scope and sequence documents. And so we're going to need some help on that to expedite that process. And then one of the things I want to do in the scope and sequence is I want to try to hone it down a little bit because I think there are too many links. There are a lot of links in those resources columns that are not aligned and not necessary and maybe even a little confusing. So we want to kind of hone that down a little bit. I just revised the agenda that I attached to the calendar invite. I don't know if you opened that or not, but I just added under the scope and sequence, filtering some of the resources. So under the grade level resource column and under the accelerate column to try to make that a little less overwhelming to teachers. We also will still, even though the school board and a lot, with some guidance from the state sort of determined that ZERN training, which I don't know that all of you will be required to do that. But anyway, I was told not to plan any summer training initially, and then that was going to be the summer training. However, since then, I've been told to make sure that we still have our asynchronous sessions up, and then I really can do some sessions if we feel like they're necessary. So that would be an important work of the task force to make those determinations, to revise some of the sessions we've already had in place. Some of those introductory sessions that we have, the illustrative math from A to Z, the whatever we're calling it now. We used to call it the middle school math instruction 101 or something like that. So just to keep those up to date and current with what's going on. And then, any ongoing efforts toward our acceleration process that we rolled out last year in response to COVID. Obviously, we went into that without a lot of knowledge, and thankfully with task force members' help and the help of a lot of you other teachers who weren't on the task force, we were able to get out what we thought was a good plan. And obviously we've made revisions throughout the year. I know that parts of it are still maybe a little too overwhelming and maybe a little too extra. It's not a very professional word, but I think y'all know what I mean. And so the task force would be a huge part of helping to make recommendations for refinement in those plans. And then obviously as we move forward, hopefully our kids are going to continue to get better and close that gap that was created, that huge chasm that was created with COVID. And those plans would need to be revised, if for no other reason for that. So that'll require a lot of discussions and input from task force members, and probably some actual work too to follow up with that input. All right, the last thing I have was just for us to have some Q&A. And although this was about task force, and I was going to work to keep the Q&A focused on task force questions, since we have a small group, I'm open to any questions you guys might have or concerns or suggestions. So at this point, just unmute if you have something, and I would love to talk it out. All right, well, I will send a follow-up email. I did record this session. Just as far as the task force, if you're wanting to be on there, make sure that you let me know. Well, that's all I have. I'm happy to stay on. If anybody has any other questions or things you want to talk about, just let me know. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you guys soon.